The thoughts we entertain each day and the way we think have the power to build up our life or tear it down. In this episode of the Passion with Purpose show, we're going to discuss how changing your thought life can change both your personal and professional life. Welcome back to another episode of the Passion with Purpose show, a video podcast that empowers you to build a life of purpose with a passion that is fireproof by exploring the intersections of life and leadership with psychology and theology. I'm your host, Stephen Mezzacappa, the founder and owner of the Passion with Purpose organization and author of the book, Passion with Purpose, The Fire Within, Building a Life of Fulfillment, Destiny, and Impact. Before we dive into this episode, I want to invite you to check out several chapters and more from my book for free. Go to passionwithpurpose.org/fulfillment to get access now. Thank you for tuning in. I'm grateful to have you with me. Let's get started. Each day, people entertain tens of thousands of thoughts. The amount, of course, varies from person to person, depending on a person's mental state, activities, and external stimuli. Either way, however, the average person can expect to have tens of thousands of thoughts per day. This may seem overwhelming, but what if our thousands of thoughts are in fact thousands of opportunities to live the life that is truly authentic to who we are, a life filled with passion and purpose? Take notice that I said a life that is truly authentic to who we are, not what we want. Sometimes in life, what we want and what we need are two completely different things. But that is an episode for another day. Thoughts carry power with them, both spiritually and physically. Proverbs says, as someone thinks within himself, so is he. What do you think about every day? Among those thousands of thoughts, what is the recurring theme? The thoughts you ponder, especially those converted into self-talk, can be detrimental if they are not healthy and factual thoughts. St. Paul the Apostle in his letter to the Philippians says, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. When was the last time you paused to take inventory of your thoughts and assess if they are pure, lovely, or admirable? Seriously, if you have to, hit pause right now and jot down some of the thoughts you've been having lately. Do negative thoughts dominate your intellect? Meaning are negative thoughts the majority of what you think about? Let's zoom into this a little more. When I refer to negative thoughts, I'm referring to thoughts that do not bring about life, that don't bring about positivity, that don't bring about improvement. I believe that some of the thoughts we let off the hook way too often are the thoughts of self-criticism. We can be so hard on ourselves, but we need to remember that there is a big difference between getting better and beating oneself down. For example, let's examine the following scenario. Let's say you recently received feedback from a friend or colleague on a project for work. Their feedback was well-intentioned to help you improve. A healthy way of processing this feedback would be to take it objectively, understand it in your mind, and then make some tweaks and improvements. Throughout the situation, your inner dialogue focuses on self-improvement, and any auxiliary thoughts you have consists of acknowledging that you aren't perfect and that this feedback is a gift to grow, get better, and improve over time. Now let's look at the scenario on the polar opposite end of the spectrum. The feedback you received was well-intentioned to help you improve, but your initial response is to get defensive, and instead of hearing the specific feedback from the individual, you hear thoughts that you think are from them, but are in actuality some arbitrary thoughts you're telling yourself. Your inner dialogue begins to erupt with feelings of self-doubt, inadequacy, and self-condemnation. At this point, it may be difficult to avoid spiraling down into a whirlpool of feeling like a failure. This may sound extreme, but I can honestly say I've been there. This happens. You see, the difference between healthy self-talk and unhealthy self-talk is that when it's healthy, it's objective and factual. It removes emotion from the equation and does not lead to self-condemnation. Healthy thought life builds us up, while an unhealthy thought life tears us down. And look, this isn't just important for yourself to be successful. Our thought life impacts our emotional and volitional life. leading to the behaviors we act out. Thus, the way we steward our thought life impacts others around us as well. Our thoughts also matter physically. Dr. Caroline Leaf is a communication pathologist and audiologist and clinical and cognitive neuroscientist. In her book, I have it right here, Switch On Your Brain, Dr. Leaf talks about two scientific terms, epigenetics and neuroplasticity. According to Dr. Leaf, epigenetics refers to the fact that your thoughts and choices impact your physical brain and body, your mental health, and your spiritual development. She further explains that epigenetics is the science behind how our thoughts and emotions are transformed into physiological and spiritual effects, and then physiological experiences transform into mental and emotional states. She goes on to say something seemingly immaterial like a belief can take on a physical existence as a positive or negative change in our actual body cells. As for neuroplasticity, this refers to the ability of the brain to change and regrow based on the thoughts, emotions, and choices we entertain. In other words, what we think about and the memories we develop form and take up physical space in our brains. In addition, what we build up in our thought life, we build up within ourselves, whether it be healthy or toxic. Also, remember that our thoughts, words, and actions can impact the thoughts, words, and actions of others, especially the inner dialogue someone might have. Be mindful of how you talk to and treat others. The words you use and how you say it have the power to affect their psyche and their soul. To quote Proverbs again, death and life are in the power of the tongue. With all of this in mind now, the question remains, how do we change our thoughts? First, be mindful of your thoughts. As discussed in a previous episode, the three faculties of our soul are the intellect, emotion, and will. Through the use of our will, we need to make a conscious and intentional decision to isolate our intellect from our emotions and be aware of what we are thinking about. Not the feelings just yet, but the things we think about, especially thoughts that may be intrusive, impulsive, or ruminating in nature. Once we are mindful of our thoughts, we can proceed by testing our thoughts. St. John the Apostle writes in 1 John, "Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, for many false prophets have gone out into the world." There's a lot going on regarding this verse as it relates to our thought life and spiritual life. Not all of the thoughts we have are ours or originate from our subconscious. In fact, some, and sometimes many thoughts our soul entertains are temptations from the enemy. Our mind and intellect is the gateway to action. Actions originate with a thought, then an emotion, turning into an attitude, which leads to a decision, and then eventually an outward action. The devil cannot force us to do something, unless one is fully possessed, but that is extremely rare. You see, the devil uses the intellect of man to tempt and influence man. That's our thoughts. It can be so tricky to discern because most of our thoughts seem like they're our own, but many times our thoughts can in fact be lies planted by the enemy. Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, "Watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. By their fruit you will recognize them." Likewise, he goes on, "Every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. Thus, by their fruit you will recognize them." Again, there is so much we can unpack here, but I want to draw attention to are two things. First, how Jesus refers to false prophets as ferocious wolves who appear in sheep's clothing. And two, how to recognize false prophets by the fruit they bear. These false prophets can be people who are pretending to speak the word of the Lord, but are in fact providing false teaching. And these false prophets can also be the enemy spiritually. We will focus on the later of these two for the purpose of this video. The enemy will tempt us with thoughts that may even initially appear as true, pure, and excellent. But we need to stay vigilant, as the enemy will do anything possible to draw us away from the Spirit of God. Before I continue, I must qualify and say we should not give the devil too much credit. Often enough, our own troubled and sinful thinking can originate from ourselves. Do not let the temptations of the devil serve as a scapegoat for your own thinking. Take responsibility. Therefore, any thought we entertain, we must test them by their fruit, because as Jesus says, by their fruit you will recognize them. Let's get literal for a moment to better apply this to our thinking and thought processes. It's fall right now as I'm filming this video, and it's getting towards the end of prime apple picking season. Some apples may still look good and shiny, but may in actuality be past their prime and taste pretty mushy. You see, it's not about how it looks when testing fruit. It's about how it tastes. In a spiritual sense, when testing spirits or our thoughts, it's not just about what the thought says on the surface, but it's also about the motive and resultant taste of the thought and the fruit it aims to bear. St. Paul, the apostle in Galatians, details the fruit and characteristics of God's Spirit as love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. These are the types of thoughts we want. With this new understanding, test your thoughts by not only asking yourself if the thought is lovely, joyful, or peaceful. Ask the Holy Spirit to help you discern, and ask yourself if the thought will lead to elements of the fruits of the Holy Spirit. Will this thought lead to attitudes, behaviors, and actions of love, joy, and peace? Will this thought bring about kindness? Will this thought bring about faithfulness? Will this thought bring about self-control? I think you get the point. Always keep your mind on guard, and remember that your own sinful thinking or temptations of the devil may appear as loving, but it might not lead to love. When examining the fruit of your thoughts, ask the Holy Spirit for help and discern what the motive of the thought is. And don't stop there. Go on and discern the fruit that thought aims to bear, meaning its eventual action. Remember, our thoughts are the gateway to outward behavior. Actions originate with a thought, then an emotion, turning into an attitude which leads to a decision and then eventually an outward action. To summarize all of this simply, let me share with you a model and process that I present in my book, Passion with Purpose, The Fire Within. It's called the Passion with Purpose model and reveals the power of inspiration, encouragement, and empowerment, and its connection to the different faculties of the soul. It talks about how inspiration affects intellect, how encouragement affects emotion, and how empowerment affects the will. It is a pretty versatile model that I apply to various contexts, such as leadership, coaching, learning, and even to the context that we've talked about in this video, the human psyche and how we think. Thus, I encourage you to edify your thought life by entertaining thoughts that are inspiring, encouraging, and empowering. Each of these actions build up each faculty of the soul. Remember, be mindful of your thoughts, test them, cast aside the false thoughts, meditate on the thoughts that bear the fruits of the Holy Spirit, and keep yourself inspired, encouraged, and empowered. If you want to learn more about the Passion with Purpose model and other elements discussed in this episode, then visit passionwithpurpose.org/fulfillment to get a free preview of my book, or simply grab the book from our website now at passionwithpurpose.org. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one.